Hello! Welcome to The Healing Artist. I'm your host, Frida, and friends, I have an absolutely unbelievable treat for you today. Joining me is my beautiful teacher, KiaRa Sita Santos, and she is a priestess of the Rose Lineage and founder of the Rose Temple Mystery School. She has been supporting women through sacred sisterhood gatherings since 2014. She is a rose womb priestess in devotion to humanity's awakening in the new earth. She was born in Brazil, raised in Bali, and has traveled the world from Hawaii to France, leading transformational women's retreats, group immersions, and rose temple gatherings. She is committed to creating spaces for authentic sisterhood to blossom so women can cultivate their innate feminine wisdom to live a more empowered and soul-aligned life. She works with the frequency of the rose and the rose lineage and rose lineage guides to support women in reconnecting to their divine essence, heal ancestral blocks, reclaim their womb wisdom, and unleash their true expression. Oh, Sita, welcome to The Healing Artist. I am so grateful you're here.
Thank you, Frida. So grateful to be here with you too.
And now tell me, what lands are you sitting on right now? Where are you joining us from?
At this moment, I'm on the island of Maui, Hawaii. So,
Oh, that's so
yeah,
wonderful.
that aloha spirit today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Friends, Sita has been, so I was so lucky to attend the Rose Temple Mystery School. And I guess I learned lots about Mary Magdalene. It's hard to describe the gift that you have brought to my life. You are a huge part of my last year, which is part of the reason I'm so incredibly grateful to have you as the ending of this year. Did we meet in the year 2024? Or yes, it was 2024.
Yeah, I think so. And then we began the work together after.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just after I'd returned from that longer Magdalene pilgrimage. So that frequency was very much in the field. And then we just were brought together with those rose symbols, and it was really beautiful synchronicity.
Yes. I would share that we met at the Goddess Festival. I had a table and was selling some goods, and so were you. And you walked by, and it was sort of like we locked eyes. We had a bit of a conversation, and later I sort of wandered over to you, and we ended up having a hug. And when I hugged you, I had tears in my eyes, and I was like, "Sister, there you are." And that was just the beginning of the ancient remembrance since then. We've had all of these different moments, and I can't exactly put my finger on it, probably because it's many times. But what you hold is that frequency of this walking the path of the rose.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah.
I would love for you to share more. It's sort of like you've reading your bio, you've been immersed in this your whole life, but I would love for you to share when you really started walking that path.
Hmm. Yeah, the path of the rose specifically. I
Yeah.
think as you read a little bit earlier, my journey really began early in my life because my parents were already immersed in spirituality and in this path of awakening. And so they kind of raised us in that frequency. And a lot of teachers came to my life from a very early age on this concept of enlightenment and awakening. And yeah, so at the end of this mystery school that I was immersed in for about 7 years, it felt my soul called me. It was through dreams and visions and this deep like intuition that started to come through of this time arriving for me to go on my own pilgrimage. And I had been studying under a teacher at the time, and I was really like following in this kind of bhakti yoga guru disciple format, going to the like near the Himalayas a lot every year and studying there. And eventually I had this dream of walking this labyrinth, and there was the labyrinth and my teacher. And guidance said, like, walk the labyrinth, don't go to your teacher. And so I began to walk the labyrinth. And from there, my teacher was behind me, no longer leading me. And it was like, you need to walk your path now and go
Mm.
through this journey. And what was calling me was Europe. And so I like kind of brought out this map of Europe and I was like, okay, intuition, you're going to show me. And I just started to circle all the places that were like glowing up on the map. And I printed these images. It was like, you're going to call in Yeshua and Mary. And I was like, I didn't grow up with Christianity or religion. I'm like, okay, I don't know why they're here, what's going on. We're just putting it all on the table, literally. And these images were just coming through of really guidance of where to go on this journey. And it was really the end of a big chapter in my life. I had a long-term partnership, I had work,
Mm.
everything. It was like you're selling all of your belongings and you're going, and it's just an unknown that you're stepping into. So it was a really
How
big,
old were you?
I think I was like 23.
Oh, okay. Was this after university or before?
Yeah, after I had.
After. Okay. And where did you go first?
So I ended up finding a ticket to London
Ooh,
and that was the landing point, but the destination was Avalon. So
okay.
which is modern day Glastonbury. And so it had been in the field a lot. And as soon as I got on that bus to Avalon, it was like, you're going home. And I was like, wow, I
Mm.
have no idea where I'm going. I'd never been to England before. I'd never really traveled Europe, so it
Mhm.
was like a whole new landscape. And it just all started to unfold and come into place from that trip. That was like a big initiation point. And when I arrived in Avalon, it was like all the cats and the witches and all the energy just like brewing in the air, like in the nighttime. And I was like, wow, this place has just pure magic. And every day was an initiation by the land, just synchronicities happening and going to each site at the exact right time and receiving all these messages from just like really dropping into myself and having let all the noise and everything of my life go to just really be and
Mm.
follow and listen. And so every day it was just that listening process. And that journey went for almost 3 months of just every day listening and no plans. And so it
I
was,
love that.
yeah. It was the first time I'd ever done that in my life, and I think a lot of people maybe don't ever even do that in their life or never have yet. And it's a
I think
big,
a lot of Americans don't even understand, could not even understand that concept,
yeah,
or maybe until retirement or something. We just aren't, we don't do that. So
right.
yeah, I wonder if that early study of the bhakti yoga was helpful in like able to be so connected with your body that you had that ability to listen, like all of that training.
For sure. Yeah. I felt like everything that I had gone through was leading up to that point of like, okay, now you're ready to learn how to listen in this new way to the great mystery and really be in the flow and allow all the blessings to come through in the way that was really effortless. And there was
Mhm.
so much, I think, like the biggest components of my practice that it brought to me was trust and faith and learning how to like go in that energy. And because there wasn't really fear. There may be moments where things weren't working out and I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? But it would pass. And ultimately, like that trust and faith is what held me through that journey. And so it was just from the beginning, from Avalon arriving there, understanding like, oh, who's Mary Magdalene? And she started to appear and like her chapel and her books and her caves and these clues that then like ended up bringing me to the south of France that year. And this was in 2018. And just going on these journeys that kept unfolding and bringing so much beauty. And so that journey was like this huge imprint point that it felt like, okay, this is the new chapter that's beginning. And also, I want to say within that was the frequency of what is the divine feminine and what is it to
Mm.
follow the feminine and to be in the spontaneity and the flow and to allow and to receive. Because
Mhm.
before that, it was a lot of the masculine and like having a masculine teacher and a lot of the practices. And I think that they were still in integrity and we worked with both masculine and feminine energies, but this was like the next level of initiating into like her.
Mm.
Felt
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So in terms of like who came to you first, so was it Mary Magdalene that came to you first or who? Yeah.
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 I think pretty much was the first like name and being that appeared. And I ended up at her chapel. Like a lot of people don't even know because it doesn't have her name, the chapel in Glastonbury. It's called St.
Hmm.
Margaret's Chapel, but it's actually dedicated to Magdalene. And just all these things started to come through. I went to this was my first time even going into churches, right? And these are some of the first churches in the world, is the St. John's Church that's up there on the hill. And I went to like my first mass, but just really it wasn't about the religion. It wasn't about what was even being said. It was to step into that frequency where Christ and his family had walked, because a lot of the Holy Family would go to the Isle of Avalon, which is what it used to be called. And at that time, the sea levels were much higher. And so they were actually like these little islands in the south of England, right? And they were all individual, and Avalon was like its own mystery school island. And so they went there for really high initiations and lived there for a long time, including
Hmm.
Anna, grandmother of Jesus, who was said to have ascended there. And there's just so much history on that little square footage of land.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you're the one that woke me up to the Essenes, which is then a lineage that I am so interested in. Like, let me find out as much as I possibly can. And all of these things. Yeah. I
yeah.
feel like Mary Magdalene tapped me on the shoulder with walking the path of the rose. And then Isis. And yeah, and then Isis.
Hmm.
Do you want to talk about how those two are related?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, ISIS took a little bit longer to like be clearly in my field. I think she was there whispering, and like the
Hmm.
Magdalene manuscript appeared, and of course there's a lot of references to Egypt, and that was one of the first books that just started to appear on tables after that pilgrimage. Everywhere I went, I was like, this
I
book is
love that.
in every house, and I'm like, and in the middle of the jungle, I was like, this is so interesting. Okay. So she was definitely like referenced in there, and within that, the mystery schools and the priestess work of studying tantra and working with our life force energy and our kundalini. And so in in the Gnostic traditions, it's said that Mary Magdalene studied in these ancient mystery schools, and that one of the biggest ones she was initiated in was in Egypt, in the mysteries of Isis, and really learning about, yeah, how to work with her own sexual energy, how to work with her life force, how to be a healer, how to be, ultimately she worked in so many different ways, like a birth doula, a death doula, working in all these different life passages, and also studying the way of the miraphors, so working with the holy oils and how they supported even resurrection, right? And that's one of the biggest references of Magdalene, like in the Bible, is working with the oils and anointing Christ. And that was a practice that she had been studying in ancient Egypt,
Mhm.
and really learning about like the embalming, learning about how to support people to leave their body and come back through the oils. And so this was one of her greatest offerings to Christ in his journey that came from that lineage. And I don't know how much you want to go into it today, but of course, like we've talked about how the stories of the resurrection and of the death of the king and the queen needing to like find that inner strength and have her own capacity to bring him back to life is repeated through history, through Isis and
Yes.
Cyrus, through Inanna and Dumuzi, and so it just keeps repeating, right? And in the Western world, they think, oh, that's the first one that had ever happened, because it expanded in a whole new way to the world and lasted in a different, like it had a different impact, right, on the consciousness of our planet, a different frequency, but it's not the first time that ever happened.
Well, the frequency became distorted.
Yeah,
So I think that what we are more familiar with is the distortion as opposed to that our body as the temple, that inner Christ consciousness that we each have the ability to connect to and hold.
for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything that I refer to with Christ and Yeshua, as I said before, is not from the religious context and is not coming from like the doctrine and the dogma, because I don't even follow that. And for me, yeah, I've not been indoctrinated, I would say. And that's not how my psyche works. I'm not even
Mhm.
seeing things through that lens. It's more stripping away all of that. How do we come back to that essence? And I think for me, that's a sad thing to witness on the planet at this time, because there's so much beauty and grace that they brought, and it was just taken over by so much darkness, from the year 325 AD to just understand how like what really happened here, in this Council of Nicaea and how things got really changed and taken over and it became about the government and the people in power wanting control. And so they just took something that was so pure and really couldn't be contained and tried to create law and order and dominate people through that. And so, obviously there's still places where people come to gather and pray and be in faith. And I think the basic goodness of our hearts are always there. But
Mhm.
there's a lot that we need to like release and strip away from. And also a lot of people that have been traumatized by these
Yes.
institutions and thinking and associating Christ and those teachings with that experience of control or something that felt
Mhm.
scary or untrue or not really connected to their heart, to their intuition. And so there's a lot of confusion that's been created, even in people's systems to like have an experience and associate it with something that it's really not. And then
Mhm.
there's a lot of deconditioning work that we have to do, to really come back to the essence of it, what it was.
That's the fun work of being a human, though. That's the fun work of being alive, to decondition away from all of this stuff that gets put on us, and to really now, what a joy to be alive right now with the rising of the divine feminine, and we're feeling it. Like that whole, as you were talking about, women were erased
Yeah.
for control, and
Yeah.
that is ending. We can feel it in our bodies, like the water is rising, and it's like, oh, here it comes. And
Yes.
that is what you're teaching. That is what you hold,
Mm.
that awakening. And
Mm.
before we started, we just had a little bit of a peek, a little chitter chat about frequency. And that frequency that you hold is that spark of awakening or the candle. Like, I feel like you're like, oh, let me touch your candle. Let me touch flames. And it's like that
Mm.
awakening to the journey. It's not an answer, it's an invitation to step on the path. Now, because it unfolds differently for each of us.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think part of what you're sharing to me, what that makes me reflect on is like all of this is not about like something that you can even put in paper or explain or try to mentally conceptualize. It's about your experience of how you're living incarnated here on earth. And that is the frequency that you embody, right? Like your awareness and all that you've cultivated and all that you are being is what you have to offer to this world. And
Yes.
that's like such an intimate process that everyone has to go through. And so much of like the institutionalization of spirituality makes it outside of us and makes us think there's something
Yes.
out there that we need to strive for or we need to like live up to. And we end up creating this paradigm within us that's accentuating like our inner critic and our inner judge and all of this that's creating separation within instead of realizing that the answer is we need to love ourselves more and we need to like welcome all these parts. Magdalene's one of her biggest offerings and teachings that was discovered in her gospel was the teaching of the seven demons. And what does that mean? They are the levels of consciousness within us that feel dense and separate that we need to overcome within ourselves so that we feel whole again. And this like concept that she was like less than and Jesus had to like heal her and cure her of these seven ailments was actually like her greatest feat that she was able to overcome that, which is an initiatory path
Mhm.
and able to embody this whole new level of consciousness
Mhm.
through the path that she chose to follow
Mhm.
alongside Christ, but not just as a disciple, also as an equal.
Mhm.
And that her ministry went on for so long. Like the crucifixion happened, they had to flee to Egypt. She gave birth to their holy child,
Mhm.
and then eventually fled to Europe and to the south of France, which was then called Gaul, to begin the next like whole wave of the ministry, which
Mhm.
continued through the rest of her life. And she was not in hiding in France. She went so far. This summer, I had the opportunity to go all the way to Spain, which was the first time I
Mm.
went all the way past the borders of France to Spain. And there's so many more sites of Magda. And I was like, oh my God, the message that came through when I was there is like just seeing all these towers on the hilltops and castles and places that are still like connected to her. I'm like, she was not playing small.
Mhm.
She took like so much courage and went so far with
We
what
would
she,
not know that from what is in our history.
yeah.
So it's
Well,
really, it's about you're feeling it in the land.
well, you're feeling it in the land, and there are like different forms of evidence. A lot of it has been erased from like textbooks, right? And even the Bible. But there are people, historians who have been studying this, and people that I've connected with that have written books about these lands and tracing back all the history and kind of like restoring the lost history through facts and evidence, which is a lot through symbology, through like the different lineages that still exist on these lands, what happened there, the names of the places. You can see like through the coat of arms, the symbols that actually meant who was connected to who. So there's like actually ways to tell what happened. And it's like an ancient like treasure hunt, people are
Mhm.
finding all these clues and putting it together. And it's really exciting because you actually start to like it starts to click and you're like, oh my God, this is real. Like you can
Yes.
see it.
And I have not, so here's the opportunity that I have being in contact with you. You're the one out there doing this, like you're the lighthouse and gathering these things, and people are coming to you, then being attracted to you. And now you have all of this information inside of you, but you are of that frequency so that I get to learn from you or interact with you and I can feel it.
Mhm.
Because I have not placed my feet on those lands yet, or taken the kind of pilgrimage that you have, but you are a living embodiment of that. And I think that that is so special. And that's not something that you tell people about. It's something that you sit quietly together and you feel because it isn't words. The frequency is something like my cells touch your cells, touch each other's cellular insides. And it's like that is the key, the unlocking. So it's hard to describe in words when it's a frequency.
Yeah.
You're an invitation.
Thank you, dear. Yeah, I think it's that's so much of what the path is for me is like we all need to learn to embody. And
Hmm.
it's not about memorizing, it's not about thinking, it's about embodying and becoming attuned to something that we can feel and learning to like raise our vibration to that again and again every day.
Hmm.
Like I renew my vows every day. I
Yeah.
commit, I sit, and it's like I return to that because this world is about forgetfulness and we need to remember. And
Yeah.
we need to put in some effort sometimes to elevate ourselves and to not fall back down because that's kind of like the impulse of what will happen. Our consciousness like keeps coming back down, raise it back up and stay in what we're calling forth and keep believing in that,
Mhm.
So
It's a
it's
practice.
yeah, it's a lifelong practice. And
Yeah.
it's not about like, okay, I'm gonna do these few weeks and it's done. It's like, no, this is your commitment for this incarnation.
I'm sorry, I'm giggling because there's I'm sorry, I'm giggling because there's like, become a priestess in one long weekend. And it's like, I
Yeah.
just did
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that out there. And I'd say like, some of the elders I've spoken to about who have been in this work already with Magdalene for 20, 30 years. I'm like, wow, all right. They were like the ones who started to carve the path and really like do that work really early on in this movement. They're kind of saying like, yeah, there will be a lot that is spoken in her name now that's not even true and that's not connected to her essence anymore. It's being like, just as Christ was taken into this whole new wave, I think Magdalene's going to have a whole new wave that comes as well. And I think that's for each discerning heart to really understand what frequency feels true to you and don't believe that everyone who uses her name or even the name of Christ or whatever, we've seen it already on our planet, right? Like you can't just believe everything. We need to practice our embodiment. And so in our embodiment, we know what resonates as truth. We need to learn how to feel that yes and cultivate that within ourselves, especially in this age of information and of
yes,
AI and of all of this, because it's just going to keep coming at us from this cerebral place. And we need to learn how to like use this body as the technology that it is.
yes.
A very advanced technology. It's more advanced than AI, right? But we like
Mhm.
get really hyper focused on these new age things and there's the danger of disconnecting from like your felt sense and your intuition and your knowing.
And when we're bombarded with information, it's hard to feel into yourself or even know what that is.
Mm.
Um, it's a practice to even get to that baseline of, well, what do I feel like without all of the bombardment and other people, and like just getting clear in one's own temple, one's own body, in order to then make discerning choices to feel into what is correct for each person, because we all have a different path. And and there's also an aspect of me that is like, but everything is exactly perfect for each person, exactly where they are on the path, and exact. So there's also that.
Yeah. And then there's also just our call to action, which is like, hey, I'm going to share this thing because it might touch someone that needs to hear that. And we never know what that moment's going to be, right? But definitely on this theme, I feel like if there were some tools that people could just start practicing as like a general thing, is like really learning to be present with our body, to be still, to,
Mm,
to practice some form of meditation of like coming into yourself
mhm,
and feeling what's here and becoming familiar with the inner landscape, and also using nature as a resource because it really helps us drop in a lot quicker. Nature is a huge technology as well that's here to support us. And when we feel really lost and like heady and on a screen and zapped by Wi-Fi and EMFs all day, it's like get outside, drop into your body, be present, be still, connect to your senses, touch the earth, like feel what's here. And that's the most beautiful thing of a lot of Magdalene sites are outdoors, our sacred
mhm,
springs, our sacred mountains, our sacred caves, and you really just there's not only the history and the imprint and the codes of those places, but nature expanding it. And in these ways that honestly, like I can't even fully explain because some of these sites look like nature's amusement park, like a cave that's
mm,
completely shaped like a yoni, all the aspects, and then you go in and it's an initiation rebirth chamber, and it's like, wow, this was designed by who? Like just the creator, and it's amazing to see these things. And I'm sure there's places like that all over the world, right, that we can connect to and find beauty, but some of them are also just on a whole other level. So it's really
yes,
exciting to be connecting to them and at the same time go and stand on whatever patch of grass you have and hug a tree. Like
yes,
anything near you, everything's accessible. And I think we just need to do that more and more through this age right now.
yeah.
Mm.
If people, do you only work with women?
No, I've mostly worked with women, but definitely there's been mixed circles. I've done a lot of different kind of like musical cacao type journeys as well that have been mixed. But this year in France, yeah, it was only this year, but it feels like a lifetime ago. This summer, I was there for 3 months and a lot of Brothers of the Rose appeared. So it was really a beautiful journey to see like it's time for the men that are also feeling called to understand their role in it and to
Mm,
really step into like those masculine qualities that are needed for this movement. If I'm honest, like they never did this alone, and it was never like just men and just women doing this path. There were probably times when they went into their own initiation separately, but they walked together
mhm.
and they did this work together, and the sacred union is such an important key of this work as well. The heroes gamos.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that you invited me to look into within this last year, and something that I've spent a lot of time now doing meditation on the sacred union.
Mhm.
It's a journey. Something that we've discussed in the past is the just sort of not necessarily knowing the divine masculine myself in my life. So then cultivating that inside of myself, and then also working with to make that feel safe inside of myself, to work on the sacred union, to bring those things together. It's just an interesting. the the journey is ongoing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and it's really within, like the sacred union is within and without. It comes in our sacred partnerships, but also like I think it's a concept that sometimes people don't really understand that the sacred union is when we feel that wholeness within ourselves and that all parts are here. And
Yeah.
from that wholeness, our cup, like if we are the chalice, the cup overflows and then we can be in that fullness of love with another, but not from a place of like emptiness.
Hmm.
but from that overflow that we just meet in a whole new way. And so this is something, it's like actually a really big concept. And I feel in some ways it's something that our planet is still really trying to understand what it is and what's coming. And I think there's going to be a whole new wave of like sacred union on this level that a lot of people have never understood or seen before. And it's going to initiate us in ways of really tearing back all of the concepts we've understood of what relationship is meant to be and what love actually is. And that's the initiation in itself, you know?
I'm
So,
getting chills. I'm very here for this.
yeah. You know, and I think like so many sisters along the path, like women have been attuning to this for a while, and there's been a lot of divine feminine movements, and now there's starting to be a little more divine masculine movements, and we're all kind of like, okay, we've done the work, and now we're waiting for the kings, we're waiting for these knights, whatever, whoever you want to call them, these beings to arrive. And I think that the time is now. It's like the inner work and the soils have been tilled to this extent that it's like the clarity of what the divine feminine is embodying is ready to welcome the match. Because until that's there, how can this divine masculine arrive if there's not enough divine feminine awakened to really be like, we're calling you in this way? You know, that's just how I like see it and sense it right now of like what's been happening if I tune
Hmm.
into like more of the collective. Because I know so many women who have been like single and on their inner path and just doing the work for so long and waiting for the right partner. And I feel like the time is really near right now. These
Hmm.
beings arriving that are ready to step into it. And for when I say like brothers of the rose, there needs to be a certain aspect of their inner feminine that's already awakened so that they can
Yeah.
actually attune to learning how to show up now as the sacred masculine that we need of like that strength, that protection, that grounding, that force that's going to keep this movement going
Hmm.
because it needs that masculine energy to support it too. You know, in the times of Magdalene and beyond, the beings that supported them were some form of the Knights Templar. Now, the Knights Templar has like a different reputation in many different schemes and timelines because it also got distorted. But
Hmm.
at one point, it was about the knights, the sacred masculine, that were the protectors and the guardians, and that really
I'm,
were the support, you know?
I'm smiling because until folks really start looking into this, because it is not in the religion, I feel like the closest thing that people have to this is like that Dan Brown book,
The Da Vinci
The
Code.
Da Vinci
Yeah, the Da Vinci Code has a lot of truth in it.
Code.
A lot.
But I think when people are listening to this, if it's a new concept, that's the closest thing we have in pop culture to what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
I mean, I just recently rewatched that movie actually when I was in France because like I
Okay.
wanted to see what happened in here. And like there's a huge chunk where he like meets the professor and they're there at night and he's telling the story of what actually happened. Pretty much all of that history piece that he shares is actually what happened. And so they like got it out into the public sphere, into the
Mhm.
psyche, saying
Mhm.
it was a fiction so that people could actually start to receive something true, which is genius in a way. Like
Mhm.
because so much of our world is like implanted through story,
Mhm.
our understanding of reality. And so he got that story out there. Of course, the end got a bit weird, and I'm like, I don't know why he chose that route, like trying to make it in this way. Like, but in essence, yes, the bloodline did continue, and there was a holy child, and it's not about trying to find them and the
No.
remaining descendants. It's about understanding like it's in all of our DNA now.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
banded, and so how do we awaken that awareness within ourselves and become that?
And the Holy Child is Sarah Tamar.
She is, yeah, she's the main one. There's different
I
theories, I'd say,
I
that
don't know her. So she's some that it's interesting because we've talked about her in class. Can you share a little bit about her? Because I don't know her. I haven't worked with her, and I'll get like a little bit of a glimpse of what we would call like the Black Madonna or something, but I haven't felt her yet.
yeah. What would you like to go into around that?
What would you like to share in 5 minutes? That's a funny question.
Yeah,
You had shared you recently went to her church at night, or maybe that story.
yeah, I mean, what just first came up is that she is a very mystical being, and I feel like she's really shrouded in mystery, and this was part of like the protection of the lineage of what happened at that time.
Mhm.
And so I feel like she's like a whole other layer of what's gonna start to emerge in the future still that's
Mhm.
coming, which part of her kind of work or imprint on on this reality, you could say, was something called the Order of the Blue Rose. And so
Uh-huh.
she's really in this frequency of the blue rose, which you think, oh, have I seen a blue rose before? No, they don't technically exist on this plane.
Right.
So they're accessing this whole other like realm of consciousness where you can, some people say like they've seen the blue rose or the blue rose appears or they've felt it inside or these different ways. And when you just tune into like that blue rose within your mind's eye, it's like such a mystical kind of alchemical thing that happened right there in her creation. And I feel like the miracle of the blue rose is the miracle of her existence. And when I went to her church, which is it's kind of a mix. There's a mix of history and timelines and even of figures and names that happened, which is part of the protection of her identity.
Mhm.
So when you go to this town, it's called Sainte-Marie de la Mer, the Saint Mary's of the Sea in the south of France, where they arrived on this miracle boat that like, shouldn't have been able to get there, but somehow God allowed it to arrive from Egypt because they were destined to perhaps die on that boat. The Holy Family arrived and these beings came out and saw that they had arrived on the shore and they were like, this is a miracle. Like this is a godsend. And someone I think it was the local Sarah Tamar who had the vision that this boat was coming, and she went out to the sea to greet her, to greet Magdalene
Right.
and Mother Mary and the other Mary Salome, Mary Jacob. Only some of them are spoken of in this church, and like the portrayal of it has become religious of like, hey, this is the story that we're telling, and so they have their own like story that they're keeping up there. And so there was this local woman who was called Sarah Tamar, and they honor her as like the gypsy and the this woman who was like a healer that was there locally already, who kind of bridged these two traditions. But at the same time, her daughter, Sarah Tamar, Sarah Kali
Sarah
is
Kali.
the Hebrew name, Sarah Kali, which means the dark princess. And the darkness, which we spoke about in the Magdalene Mysterium course, is this shroud of like protection around the secret. So
Hmm.
the Black Madonnas are said to be Mary Magdalene and her daughter Sarah. And the blackness is not necessarily that their skin was like pure black. I don't believe they were like these white Caucasian beings because they weren't. That's not where they came from, right? They came from Africa. But I don't know if they were, I don't know their skin tone. But let's just say, as the representation of this symbol of darkness, it was shrouding them in this protection of like secrecy so that they wouldn't be uncovered. Because what happened to Christ? He was killed. The whole Holy Family had to flee. They couldn't be out in the open as like, this is who I am, and this is the legacy I'm creating, and this is what will come. That's, kind of what happened to Christ. And so it's like, all right, they went into some form of hiding to be able to continue their work and fulfill their mission before they could pass in peace.
Hmm.
And so the Holy Child was protected as well through that. And I think some of the history here of like, hey, where did she go? What ended up, why wasn't she like spoken of more? Number one, out of protection. And number two, like some of that had to be hidden and wasn't revealed and wasn't preserved. So there are some question marks. Like the only text that I've read about where she actually ended up going was through Claire Hartstrong's channelings, which are her books about like Anna, grandmother of Jesus, and
Hmm.
the voice of the Magdalens. And in the
Hmm.
second book, she speaks of like her traveling to, I think it's Ibiza and maybe the islands. I don't know if she went to all Mallorca, Minorca, and continued her ministry in like a healing center that was there for people because they did a lot of like healing for people who were sick or poor or going through something really challenging. Like they were just straight off like how do you say, on the front lines, pretty much. That's the work that they were doing at the time was just we're going to help everyone in need and go full out in that and also share their spiritual healing. But they really, so she apparently then went to one of these islands and continued healing there,
Hmm.
according to this book.
Hmm.
Now, the Order of the Blue Rose and where she ended up traveling and where she ended up continuing her studies, I don't know because that's not necessarily traced.
Hmm.
But I feel like her frequency, so I described earlier that there's this church in the south of France, right, where there's Sarah Tamar. But when I approached that church, the frequency that I felt, it wasn't necessarily about this gypsy woman who's revered there. It was the divine union. It was fully feeling that. Like I approached it and this wave of
Mm.
energy just hit me. I couldn't speak or even like move anymore. And I was just like full silence, almost like going to faint and walking. I'm like, I need to get to the top altar and just sit, you know. And there
Hmm.
are relics of these beings, like of their parts of their bodies and parts of their clothes and stuff that are stored in this church. And so there's a
Hmm.
lot of energy in there. And for me, when I just went in there, it was just this full presence of like the beloved and even having visions of like the sacred masculine arriving and fully finding this union within. And so it just really felt like the codes of that divine union are there. And
Yeah.
for me, that translated to like, yeah, as the Holy Child, because what is the Holy Child if not the evidence of that divine union that came
Yeah.
from Magdalene and Yeshua?
Mm. Oh, thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one level of what I can share.
Oh,
Let's
that is just,
go
honey, that
deeper.
is just cracking the surface. We were just cracking the surface. So
Mm.
if you want to learn more about the absolutely amazing Magdalene Mysterium and hang out with this beautiful human, KiaRa Sita Santos, who I cannot draw enough hearts around, if you can't tell. Yeah, you've just been such an incredible guiding light for me
Mm.
this period of time since I've known you. Just feeling into your frequency. If other people wanted to meet you, if they wanted to join the Temple Mystery School, could you share a little bit about how they would find you?
Yeah, well, our website is therosetemple.org, just rosetemple.org. And the next like open offering that I'm going to be doing is on December 4th, I believe. It's the full moon. And we're going to be having the Rose Temple Sisterhood, which is going to be an open circle for the global community. And yeah, I know you've been a part of that for almost the past, I think, 6 months already somehow. And so we're opening the next round, and that will be a space to really connect with different sisters that are walking this path and to feel into that frequency and be in the space of support and deeper sharing of our journeys. And it's really a place of like upliftment, of tuning in through the seasons, of having this like anchor place to really stay connected and
Mm.
uplifted in this type of energy, like we're sharing here today. And we do some meditation practices and some at-home explorations are given as well, but it's really this beautiful container. And so December will be the opening, and then it will continue on for 5 to 6 months. And that will be the first one. And then I'm brewing up a offering that will be around Christmas. That will probably also be an open offering for the community to really connect in, because I find like this phrase Merry Christ Mass to be so funny. That everyone says it, and I'm like, do you know you're saying Mary first, actually? We go, Merry Christ Mass. All right, let's do the Merry Christ Mass. And so I want to do a Merry Christ Mass this year, and I'll probably be broadcasting it from Brazil because I'll be there in the south and potentially meeting some new Magdalene sisters there. Um, and then we'll begin the Mysterium in January, which will be this time a little bit expanded. It's going to be, I think, 5 months. So we'll meet every other week instead of doing a weekly pace so that we have a
Okay.
little more time to integrate and brew into
Mm.
the material. And then it will culminate for those who do it in the potential pilgrimage to France. So anyone who's completed that course is like has the prerequisite to join us on the journey because it's a really big initiation to France next summer. It'll be in June. So just starting to announce these things. It's just popping up. There's some wait lists that are open. I haven't opened registration for the Mysterium or the pilgrimage yet, but you can join the wait list, and the circle you can sign up already in December 4th. So that's what's coming up.
Yes. So friends, if this is piquing your interest, if you're like, what's that? What's that? Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to go check that out. And all of these things will be in the show notes below. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking a time here on the new moon Whenever I think new moon, I'm like, welcome to the new you. It's the new
Yeah.
moon. It's like, what's coming?
Yeah.
Oh man, thank you. And I wanted to tell you that I love you.
Well, I love you too, dear.
God, universe, source loves you. And I hope that you have a wonderful day.